Right, folks, if you could take your seats, please. Thank you very much. This is the last speaker of this morning. Please welcome to the stage Laura Casci from BJSS. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you for selecting my session to come along to today. Unfortunately, that's probably your first mistake as a leader today, because I'm not really much of a conference speaker. I'm more of someone that gets stuff done. So fingers crossed for all of us for the next 30 minutes, and I know I'm keeping you back from your lunch. I'm really sorry. Hopefully that does, though, mean that I can bring some of my real-life experiences to today's presentation on leadership, where I'll be exploring the question on what makes a good leader. However, more importantly, I want the outcome of today to make you, all leaders, hopefully in the room, explore the question, am I a good leader? Not me. Obviously, the answer is no, but for you guys. And I'll be honest, if there's a topic that makes me slightly nervous, it's this one, because I do feel like a bit of an imposter sometimes, and it's very natural for most people. Because many of us actually haven't explored this question at all and haven't given these two questions the due diligence they deserve. However, before we get started, let me introduce myself properly. So my name is Laura Casci. I have been in the IT industry for 25 years. I know I don't look it. And I have been in a managerial or leadership role for nearly as long. I do say, what do they say about these things? Those that can do, those that can't manage. I'm currently head of delivery for BJSS in Scotland, a large IT services consultancy, a role which has seen me grow my team from 10 people when I joined 5 years ago to nearly 200 today. And in my role, I'm responsible for running a sustainable business unit in Scotland, which includes managing our teams in Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen. My responsibilities include managing the P&L, driving sales, ensuring delivery quality, undertaking people management, and in general, making sure that BJSS in Scotland is both successful and a good place to work, which is really important in the leader. So let's start talking about leadership. Whilst a picture might not paint 1,000 words, in this case, I'm hoping that this fun image of me being crowned Queen Laura of Scotland shows that people in my team regard me as a leader. But even if you're not being seen as a leader in your organisation, or if you are being seen as a leader in your organisation, it doesn't reflect if you're a good one or not. And yes, I wear my crown regularly. And I may be wrong, but I'm assuming that most of us in the room don't have the benefit of a real crown or throne. Instead, most of us have found ourselves in a leadership position from a mixture of merit, discipline, hard work, luck, force of personality, all of those things. And unlike our new king, most of us haven't had 70 years of training in leadership. In fact, many of us will have had none. I'm also very aware that I found myself in a leadership position without really truly understanding the role of a leader. In fact, it was only putting this presentation together that I actually properly explored what a good leader should be for the first time. A pretty big feeling on my part, given my role. My exploration of leadership had to start somewhere, so I decided to begin my research for this presentation by Googling great leaders. It seemed as good a place as any to start. And what I got back was a really interesting set of results. There was historical leaders, political leaders, tech leaders. In fact, you get a really wide variety when you use an open search. And it was for this very reason that I wanted to explore with you today what makes a good leader. You see, while most people won't argue that Gandhi or Martin Luther King were great leaders, I imagine, with a Scottish audience, some of you might be critical of describing Maggie Thatcher as a great leader. But there are people in this, possibly this room, who still idolise her to this day. And I hate to admit it, one of my team is such a strange person. And he actually may be here today on our stand. I'll let you figure out which one it is. I'm also very aware, as a leader in technology, my team's views on their preferred technology often bias their opinion on whether the leader of that tech organisation is good or not. How many people do you know that would never buy a Tesla because they don't like Elon Musk, and others see him as a genius, an innovator, a leader? Or still blame Bill Gates for their hatred of Microsoft products. Yet others think he's ahead of his time, brought tech to the masses, and he continues to be inspirational, charitable, and a leader. Bias in leadership is, of course, much wider than that. We could easily talk about the lack of females, I am one, and general diversity in leadership roles. And whilst that's a worthy topic, it's not the topic we're going to explore today. But of course, it didn't end there. Many of the names that came up as influential leaders are people that we call despots, murderers, and monsters: Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, to take your pick. So how did so many people with different characteristics and beliefs all become influential leaders? The reality is there's different types of leaders and different types of leadership styles. According to the renowned psychologist Kurt Levin, there are 4 leadership styles. There's the autocratic leader, just do as you're told. I quite like that one. The democratic leader, who makes a decision, but only after getting the input of the teams. There's the transformational leaders, who develop a grand vision and rally the team around it. And then there's the laissez-faire leaders, who let the team make all the decisions, but are there for support. I think we should explore these in a little bit more detail, because after my research, I now believe it's actually really important to know your inherent leadership style, and I'll explain why a little later. So, most of us don't want to be called an autocratic leader, and that's because in this day and age, there's a belief, probably founded in fact, that most people don't react well to that style of leadership. And certainly not in the tech industry, where a buoyant tech market means that people can quickly, easily, and quite often for more money, move job very quickly. But there are real benefits of an autocratic style. How many of you in this room have been frustrated that progress is being hindered by a lack of agility in your organisation, a lack of accountability, and a lack of quick decision-making? I imagine there's some of you. And it's well shown through research that slow decision-making cripples a business. Slow decision-making costs businesses time, it costs them money, it costs you your customer relationships, it can impact culture, and it can be psychologically damaging for your teams. And yet in the tech industry, where we often pride ourselves in innovation, we are often still slow to make decisions. And that completely disrupts the potential for innovation and increases the time to implement new ideas and the time to market for new products and services. We're hurting our own very businesses by not being better at making quick decisions. So, on that basis, is an autocratic leader a bad thing? Personally, I don't think so. And that's probably why there's a well-used phrase in BJSS Scotland, to be voluntold. Normally by me, although it's definitely catching on with the rest of my team. The definition of voluntold, just for interest, is where a lucky member of the BJSS team is told what to do, but in a nice, encouraging way, where the benefits to them and others is fully highlighted to the point it's difficult to say no. It's a really effective method of leadership, and it gets things done. Now, let's explore the democratic leader. In tech delivery, we like to work in an agile, collaborative way where teams feel empowered and feel that they're making a contribution to the outcomes delivered. What can be better than that? And whilst on paper that sounds the leadership style that we should all aspire to in tech, the reality is that not all teams are high functioning enough to make the democratic leader a success. Not only can it take a while for a new team to be high functioning, not all teams will actually get there. What happens if your team is just not able or willing to come up with the ideas and solutions you need? Or worse, coming up with the wrong ideas and solutions that impact your business? Another challenge of the democratic leader is, or a democratic-led team, is that strong voices in the team often drown out those quieter or less experienced voices, to the point that those people feel disillusioned and leave your business. Because of that disrupted team dynamic, not all potential great ideas are realised. So we've all been there, and some of us have been that very person in the room. You're noisy, you're confident, you get listened to whilst others don't. And that is a real problem for business and for tech, because the noisiest voices are not always generating the best ideas. So when there isn't a high-functioning team with an inclusive dynamic, we've got to question if these types of leaders can be truly successful, especially if they're not getting the input they need. But it isn't all bad news for democratic leaders, because with the right team, this style of leadership can really bring positive results, particularly great morale and creativity, which will ultimately drive innovation and solutions to the problems that you have as a business. Transformational leaders are really interesting because they focus on organisations' vision and gets everybody rallied around that vision. It can inspire a lot of loyalty, and people work really hard to achieve the goals set out by the leader. When I first started at BJSS, we were delivering a really large and important digital transformation programme for Disclosure Scotland. And we were doing it in a rather smelly, cramped porta cabin down in the Glasgow quayside. Wasn't a great environment to get the best out of a team. It was a major challenge because whilst it was really interesting work from a technology perspective, the delivery plan was often read. I hate to admit that, but it was. And that was because the complexity and the scale of the work. Unfortunately, it also has a hard and movable end date for switching off the old platform. But the cause was really important to the BJSS team, and despite the challenges, the team really rallied around that mission, which was protect vulnerable people in Scotland, because they had sons, daughters, nieces, parents, grandparents, who would all be at risk if the old system was switched off before a new operational system was in place. And to that end, my team worked all the hours they could because they were invested in the mission and they need to deliver the programme on time. But when your team's not getting home to midnight or sometimes later, when your team is only getting a few hours sleep in the hotel next to the smelly porta cabin and having to turn their underwear inside out because that stayover wasn't expected, you get burnout and you get an even smellier porta cabin. But seriously, burnout is a key challenge of that type of leadership. In addition, this type of leadership can often drive a team apart. That's because those who can't and won't commit to the same cause or invest the same hours are seen as uncommitted by the rest of the team. And that can result in a rift in the team dynamic. Those individuals who can't invest the time become very disillusioned. And in fact, in my case, it led to one upset member of my team accusing me about not caring about them or the well-being of the rest of the team, which of course I did. But I also knew failure in that mission to protect vulnerable people in Scotland was just not an option. So in my view, this style of leadership is amazing in short to mid-term bursts, where there's an important mission that people can buy into, but it isn't sustainable as a long-term leadership style. The next one is very much my least favourite leadership style of all four, because maybe you've already got this, that I'm a slight control freak. Because the laissez-faire leadership style really means being pretty hands-off and putting your trust in your team. However, interestingly, when I assessed myself using a brief survey, I came out as having a 40% laissez-faire leadership style, which, look, I would completely disagree with in most circumstances. But I know why that happened and why it happened at this time. You see, personally, I now have total trust in my leadership team, and I'm happy to leave them to it. But it wasn't always the case at BJSS or other organisations. I'm sure you've also found yourself in the same place. And it took some levers from my team I inherited, hiring some new people, including some great individuals I'd worked with before, and working together as a team for a while to get into that position. It also took breaking a few rules. For example, in Scotland, we have a standard, in BJSS, we have a standard leadership team structure. And I adapted that to meet what I needed in Scotland. And maybe being allowed to change that structure to meet my needs in Scotland demonstrate that my senior stakeholders also have a laissez-faire approach to leadership, particularly when they're comfortable that the right outcomes are being achieved. I'm aware that I'm very lucky because my own leadership team works really well with litter supervision. But this is only possible because we're very clear on our group vision. And whilst we don't always agree, we leave the room all pulling in the same direction. If there is no clear, well-communicated vision, this leadership style fails. It doesn't work, and I've got a recent example of that. So we recently set up a new working group in BJSS Scotland, I'll not say which one to preserve the dignity of the people concerned, who presented me some of their ideas. And when I challenged them on the lack of business value of some of those recommendations, to my unbelievable disbelief, they genuinely questioned why we had to do something that had a business value and why it was important. So this seemed completely naive to me, and it's particularly important to recognise that that team is not ready for a laissez-faire approach. But it isn't a surprise, given that that's a new team with some new people in it as well, and who are new to BJSS. But I also had to look at myself, because I'd obviously not been clear enough with them up front to highlight that a high-level business case for all recommendations was required. So, those that are a fan of a whodunit will have worked out by now the message I've been building up to, and it's not there's been a murder, it is that whilst you may have an inherent leadership style, a good leader is someone who can take account of the situation, the team maturity, and the other key factors, and adapt your leadership style to suit. Okay? So you may have been surprised that I've been talking about leadership for quite a while now, and I actually haven't yet talked about the definition of a leader. And that's been quite purposeful, because like the variety of great leaders that were returned when I did my search, there's lots of definitions of the word leader. But unlike that initial great leader search, most definitions were similar in their theme and do have a bit of commonality about them. The words influence, aspire, to help and support, to meet goals were all common. But for me, there's no doubt a leader is someone who must inspire passion for the end goal. I feel I use my loudness, energy and commitment to BJSS to do that, but others will inspire in their own way. I'm personally more inspired by a quiet confidence in a leader rather than someone like me. As a leader, you also need to have a clear vision, and you need to be able to communicate that vision to your teams. But remember, that vision must help you make your business objectives a success, not just help you meet your personal goals. And lastly, but not least, a leader must make sure their team has the right support to achieve the goals in order to help your business thrive. However, personally, I believe being a good leader isn't just one thing. It's a combination of all those factors. And remember too, that different situations and different teams need different leadership styles. To be a good leader, you must adapt yourself to the different types of people you have in your organisation. But here's the kicker. You may be doing all those things, or at least think you are. But the reality is, it doesn't matter if you think you're a good leader, unless your teams think you're a good leader. So how do you know that you're a good leader and the right leader for your team? The answer is you ask. And I'd like to think that most of you have conversations with your direct reports and maybe even with your wider team, and you'll ask them, can I help? Can you help them? Or do they need anything else from you as a leader? But in these post-COVID days of remote and hybrid working, you may not see your teams as regularly as you once did. And it's difficult to get round them, especially if you've got a large team and a busy portfolio of work. The other question is, do the people that you lead, can they be honest in a face-to-face catch-up with you if you're a good leader? And the answer is that some can be and some can't. At BJSS, like many organisations, we try to understand our team and their needs by utilising a yearly employee engagement survey. It's done at a business unit level, in my case Scotland, and it's specifically designed to understand if our teams are happy and how we can improve their experience at BJSS. We also do a comparison on previous years, and importantly, it's anonymous. There are lots of questions in the survey: contentment with salary and benefits, enjoyment of your client and the technology of the projects you're working on, the availability of training, etc., etc. But there's one section that always makes me very nervous, and that's because it's pretty personal. We ask our team, do they trust the judgment and decision-making of the local leadership team, which is effectively me and my direct reports. We tend to get a fairly high response rate because people are aware we do action the results of the survey, and this year we achieved 95% response rate. And I'm pleased to say that 96% of people who responded said they trusted the local leadership team in Scotland. Pretty good. Unfortunately, my immediate reaction was, who are the 4% that don't trust us? And that's me saying it in a really nice way without using the swear words I used. I did wonder how we could hunt them down and kill them, but in hindsight, that's really not a bad position to be in. And I promise I didn't hunt anybody down or kill them. I didn't know who to. They were anonymous, the survey results. And if it wasn't for today's presentation, I'd have left it at that, and I would have been really happy enough to consider myself as a good leader. But I'm here presenting on leadership, and I'm a great believer in bravery. And funnily enough, bravery isn't one of those descriptions of leadership styles that we discussed. But I personally think bravery is essential in a leader. Bravery helps us have those difficult decisions and helps us have those difficult conversations. So this is where I got brave. I decided to send out a short, anonymous survey, which included 3 questions to the 200 or so people on our Scotland Slack channel, and gave them the opportunity, entirely on a voluntary basis, no voluntelling, I promise, if they wanted to complete it. I did quickly run this crazy harebrained scheme past my leadership team. Michael's one of them sitting in the front here, to give me the confidence to do it. Wisely or not, they said, go for it. So I did. And the 3 questions I asked are up on the screen. In your opinion, sum up in one word or phrase the most important leadership quality. Does Laura Casci, me, demonstrate that quality? Is Laura Casci, me, a good leader? Then I waited in trepidation and only hoped that a few of the more difficult members of my team weren't in that day. So what happened next? Peeking through my fingertips, with fear, honestly, I focused my eyes on the responses to the first, less scary question. What word or phrase demonstrates the most important quality in a leader? Now, I'm not going to go through all of these individually because, just like on every other topic, my team have loads of opinions and we don't have all day. However, what is interesting to see is the variety in that one word that summed up a leader to those individuals. The other reason I'm not going to go through these is because this is my team and their responses. And the qualities that your team might look for may be similar, may be quite different, but the key is to know what your team needs so you can be a better leader to them. So thankfully, out of all the people who completed the impromptu leadership survey, 100% of this response was positive, which was really heartwarming and quite frankly a relief. However, I'm also very aware that how the team perceives you as a leader is just one factor of leadership. And having a successful business unit and meeting the targets set for that business unit are just as important in a leader. But I would say having a team supporting you because you're giving them what they need will mean you're more likely to be successful in meeting your business targets. It's really a win-win situation if you can understand the needs of your team. And now, as a result of being brave and doing that survey, I know what a large proportion of my team want in a leader. And you'll be pleased to hear, because I know it's nearly lunchtime, I'm getting to the end of my presentation. It's nearly time to say goodbye, but not quite. So before I go, I'm going to leave you with some homework and some key takeaways from today. Firstly, use this quick tool, the link shared here from the University of Arizona, to determine your inherent leadership style. It's quick and a bit dirty, but it will give you a good view of what you are as a leader. And once you've determined your own inherent leadership style, make sure you understand what your team and your business want from a leader. Having a clear understanding will make most of you Not only more successful with your team, but also your senior stakeholders. Once you know your inherent leadership style, adapt it for the right situations and people. Remember, we've talked about doing the right thing for your teams. Be brave and ask people if you're a good leader. Find the best way to do that for you. Ask it in a nice, gentle way. Do a wide-ranging survey, or just do what I do and go the whole hog. And if there is some feedback you don't like, don't take it too personally. There's always going to be one or two idiots that respond to the survey. But do look to see if any of the feedback is valid. And if there's something that needs to be addressed, do it. Because that self-improvement will mean that you not just become a good leader, that you become a great leader. Finally, just to sum everything up, know yourself and your leadership style. Know your team and their needs. Adapt when appropriate to do so. And if all else fails, go for the sympathy vote. And just like one of your team post a highly embarrassing picture of you on a team day out for the weekly caption competition. And if you're interested in the actual captions, you'll need to come and speak to me on the BJSS stand. Thank you.
There was a fourth question in that survey which read, should Laura have to wear the crown when she does the digit presentation? And they all answered yes, but she ignored it. So we've just got a couple of minutes before lunch. Has anybody got any questions at all? See, I would have bet the farm on that, I must confess. Can I ask you to thank Laura one more time? Thank you.